talking about whether cookbooks are being replaced by Facebook and Instagram and video. And as the people of the book, and I know this is your focus as well, of your audience, I still think that people want cookbooks. Jewish people always want a book to hold, because cookbooks are not just recipes, they're often stories.
This is the Book of Life. I'm Heidi Rabinowitz. Paula Scheuer is known as the Kosher Baker. She's the author of 4 Jewish cookbooks, and she's an advocate for healthy and delicious Jewish eating. I spoke with her in the breezy courtyard at the Limud Jewish Education Conference in Boca Raton, Florida. Be sure to check out bookoflifepodcast.com for links to Paula's writing and her recipes.
I'm here with Paula Scheuer, and we are at the Limud Conference in Boca Raton, December 2018. So, Paula, first give us a little introduction. Explain who you are.
So I am known as the Kosher Baker. I went to pastry school in Paris in the 90s, and this was a career change for me. I started off as a lawyer and then went to cooking school just for fun. But then I ended up starting a catering business overseas in Switzerland, and then from there I came back to the U.S. and started teaching classes and started editing books, and then I started writing cookbooks. And I'm the author of 4 cookbooks: the Kosher Baker, the Holiday Kosher Baker, the New Passover Menu, and my latest is the Healthy Jewish Kitchen.
Excellent. Okay, so you're going to be giving a session here at Limud. First, tell us, how did you get involved with Limud?
So I got involved with Limud, which is a conference that brings together different experts in so many different areas of Jewish life, whether it's food, music, health, and wellness. So I knew about the conferences, and I sold books at a Limud conference in New Jersey last year. And then my aunt was involved on the committee here, and she told them about me and said, "Oh, you need to bring Paula. She speaks all over the world, blah, blah, blah. I'm on TV all the time. Bring Paula." So that's how I got here.
Was there a particular reason that you felt Limud was an important thing to participate in?
Well, I wanted to come to Florida because my mother-in-law lives right here. But one of my kind of career goals about a year plus ago was I want to speak at more conferences because, I meet a lot of women who cook in my events all around the country, and I do cooking classes for federations, JCC, synagogues from Reform to Lubavitch, and I meet that community. But Limud attracts kind of a different community, kind of a more intellectual group, and I'm always looking for new audiences because I learn from people wherever I go.
Okay, great. So can you give us a very short version of the talk that you'll be giving today?
Well, I gave 2 talks today. My first one was on taking traditional Jewish food and taking the calories out of it. I talk about my journey, my own personal food story. Every Jewish person has a food story, whether it started when they were children in their grandmother or aunt's kitchen or mother's kitchen, or it's their food story that was from a pivotal time in their life, first apartment off campus in college, graduates after graduate school, first married home, empty nesting, all of those different stages of life. People cook and eat differently. And I feel that today we want to honor our traditions, but at the same time, modern cooks want to eat modern food. We want it to be easier to prepare. We don't want to wash so many dishes. We don't want to go to 5 different stores to buy things. But we also want that connection with traditional Jewish food, especially for Shabbat and holidays. So I try to bridge that gap between traditional and modern by taking traditional recipes and reimagining them. So in the talk today, I talked about how I take coleslaw and I use a mango puree instead of mayonnaise, and how I took traditional chicken soup and turned it into Vietnamese noodle soup. Grandmother's stuffed cabbage has brown rice and turkey as opposed to beef and white rice. So it still tastes like the food we love. I also talked about healing through food because my book, The Healthy Jewish Kitchen, came out of the loss of my mother and then my father as well. So it really healed me eating natural food, just taking all the processed food out. And I'm not trying to tell people that you can only eat a certain way. I offer a shift from kind of where you are to like where you could be, that adding more whole grains into your Jewish baked goods and taking out some of the fat and salt, you can still enjoy the food, but just start to feel better and have more energy for the people and things you want to do in your life. My afternoon session is the history of Jewish cookbooks, but it really is a story of immigration of Jews to America. And then it goes into the books that tell a story. I guess the part that I would like to focus on right now is those community cookbooks. I always call them the Bubby cookbooks. So whether it's a Hadassah or your synagogue, those created cookbooks, those are these wonderful compilations of communities' favorite recipes at a period in time. So if you pick up one of these books, whether it's from California or Long Island, it's going to be the recipes of the people who live there, and they were using whatever kosher ingredients were available then. You can literally trace when certain ingredients were introduced into kind of our Jewish lives through these recipes, because Crisco shortening didn't exist in the early settlement cookbooks, and then it shows up. And then you see margarine shows up. And now modern recipes, cooks like me, we're using coconut oil. We're trying to move away from the overly processed part of margarine, the rich whips, and the very kind of chemically focused substitutions for dairy ingredients. We don't even have to do that anymore. We have coconut milk, we have rice milk, we have oat milk, cashew milk, hazelnut milk, almond milk, soy milk. It's just a wonderful time to be a kosher cook. So I talk about kind of where we started, which was really helping new Jews become more American through cooking American food but making it kosher, to honoring our traditions by having traditional food, but also kosher and Jewish people wanting to eat what everybody else is eating. So a way to include that into our recipes. And then as you move into other parts of history, you have times where the cookbooks were geographically based, Italian Jewish food, Chinese Jewish food. Then you have a whole group of the historical books. And you have books that really research history, whether it's American history or history of the diaspora, through recipes. And then the next phase was kosher cookbooks starting to look like everybody else's books. So they were just really fun. They had lots of glossy pictures, and people embraced that. And that ushered in a new era for kosher cookbooks. Now it's incredibly saturated. You know, I write books. I love my books. I'm about to embark on one or two other cookbook projects. So there's still more recipes out there. Today, people continue want to eat what everybody else is eating, and especially strictly kosher people. They don't want to adapt the recipes. If they go online and find a recipe that has a non-kosher ingredient, it's just work for them. They want somebody to say, here's how to make a Thai fish soup, and here's how to make a bibimbap, and Korean bibimbap or a Vietnamese dish. Like, they want to know that it's already kosher, and how to use the new ingredients that are out there. So a lot of the books today are about using new ingredients, whether they're Middle Eastern ingredients like date syrup, or their kosher certified gochujang sauce, which is a new product that came out about 2 years ago. And I also end up talking about whether cookbooks are being replaced by Facebook and Instagram and video. And as the people of the book, and I know this is your focus as well, of your audience, I still think that people want cookbooks. Jewish people always want a book to hold, because cookbooks are not just recipes, they're often stories. And today, you can get a recipe here and there, but you're not going to get the history, and you're not going to get the backstory, and you're not going to find out why that recipe is important in the world or in the Jewish world. So it's wonderful that there's so much access today. So we have this wonderful kind of treasure of Jewish books of the past, and new books coming out all the time that teach us something new. But at the same time, there are just as many cookbooks that come out, like a gefilte fish cookbook and Jewish baking books that are really old world, but made for a modern audience.
Hey, Book of Life listeners, Heidi here. I interrupt this podcast with an important announcement. I'll be hosting a Book of Life live show in Woodland Hills, California, near Los Angeles, on June 17th, 2019, at 5:30 p.m., as part of the Association of Jewish Libraries' 54th Annual Conference. Guests include Joni Sussman of Carbon Publishing and author/illustrator/musician Barney Salzberg, famous for his book Beautiful Oops. The live show is free. Conference goers get in automatically. All others must RSVP by June 10th to be admitted. Email me at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com for details. And now, back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
What interview question do you wish you would be asked that you tend not to get asked?
Every once in a while, I'll finish an interview and say, oh, that was a good question. People often ask me, what's your favorite recipe? I guess maybe, how is what I do still important? Why is it important? What's the one message I want to spread in the world? I guess kind of the bigger picture questions that people don't always ask. Everybody's really deep in the tips and the menu planning and how am I doing this holiday and that kind of thing. So I don't always get the big picture questions.
So what is your answer to that big picture question?
I feel like I do what I do because I want to share this message of the joy of eating. What I would like to do is I share recipes as a vehicle to bring community together. I think people will always show up when there's good food. I think kids will stay at the table longer. You can nourish your aging parents. You can bring in people who are new to Judaism and help them connect with our community through food. So I feel like it's kind of obvious, but yet it has to be deliberate, because as the community becomes more intermarried and more assimilated and more we just want to do whatever's trendy, I feel like you're going to pull Jewish people together, then the Jewish food will be there, that they'll choose to include that as part of that community building.
Cool. So you've partly answered something that I wanted to talk about, which is Tikkun Olam. So you were talking about food for healing, and now you're talking about food for bringing people together. But I want to ask you sort of a broader activist question. What action would you like to invite people to take to heal the world, whether through food or something else?
Well, it's interesting. I wrote an article that hasn't been published yet, so I'm going to premiere it now. I think it's going to come out next year. I was a mourner for 2 years straight, for first my mother and then my father. I published an article about what it was like studying Kaddish when you're on book tour and all the different places and all the wonderful experiences I had around the world saying Kaddish. But the second article I wrote was what it's like to be a mourner. I realized that our community can do a lot more for our mourners. We do great for Shiva, we do great for maybe Shloshim on people's yard sites, but in between, if somebody's not saying Kaddish, they fall through the cracks. If they're not doing the daily Kaddish, they're not constantly around people who are lifting them up. So my Tikkun Olam is something I want to implement. Is I would like every synagogue, and I don't care if it's Reform, and I don't care how Orthodox it is, every Rosh Chodesh, which is the new month, to have a list of volunteers who are going to reach out to whoever the mourners are that year. They're going to bake a machala, invite them to a meal, see how they're doing. Just check in, because when you've lost somebody important, nobody asks you after the first month to, so how are you doing? So I would like synagogues to start this and do it every month on Rosh Chodesh, so that our mourners always feel like somebody is there for them. And maybe they're doing great, but maybe they're not. And I feel like we could be just doing better for that community.
That's beautiful. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about that I didn't think to ask you?
What I love about what I do is I get to travel so much and meet Jewish communities everywhere I go. And that's been really special, because sometimes I'll go someplace and everyone's in their 30s, and sometimes everyone's in their 60s. Sometimes it's a thriving community in Chicago or Columbus, Ohio, or Los Angeles. And other times I'm in small towns, small communities where they don't have tons of Jewish people or tons of Jewish programming. And what I do is so greatly appreciated there. So I've really enjoyed, through my work, doing these talks and cooking classes everywhere. It's like a window on Jewish America.
Paula Scheuer, thank you so much for speaking with us.
It was really fun to be with you today. Thank you.
I'm Alyssa Brent Weissman, the author of The Length of a String. I'll be joining you soon on the Book of Life podcast, and I'd like to dedicate my episode to anyone who has gone or will go bar or bat mitzvah dress shopping with her mom. It's just something you have to get through.
If you enjoy the Book of Life podcast, please become a patron at patreon.com/bookoflife. Leave a review on iTunes or a comment on our blog at bookoflifepodcast.com. You can also like our page at facebook.com/bookoflifepodcast. Follow us at twitter.com/bookoflifepod. Email us at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 561-206-2473. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida at cbiboca.org and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band. Thanks for listening and happy reading.